Governments pushing EVs avoid awkward questions about the problems with public charging by relying on the fallacy that most people will charge their EVs at home. When it's pointed out that public charging is slow, expensive and inconvenient, the evangelists say that people can just charge their EVs at home overnight. Simples. But this, as any sane person knows, is pure nonsense. To charge at home, you need an off-street parking space close enough to your house or electricity supply, but not a garage because people are specifically advised not to charge their EVs in a garage due to the fire risk. This rules out most inner-city premises where the only option is on-street parking, and draping cables across pavements isn't exactly a safe or practical solution. But what about apartment blocks with underground car parks? As we will see in this video, a combination of more restrictive insurance requirements and tighter fire regulations will make retrofitting charging stations in such car parks prohibitively expensive, again, due to the risk of fire and the potential for catastrophic damage from a lithium-ion battery fire. It's just another in the long list of reasons why ordinary people aren't being persuaded to switch to EVs. Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed, doesn't cost anything, and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. I've thought for some time that the limiting factor on private EV charging installations will be insurance and fire regulations. If you have a block of, say, 20 units with a car park underneath, what would happen if one resident installed an EV charging point in their space? Would the building insurance remain valid? Would the premium go up? Should the resident using the charging point pay more towards the insurance than the other unit owners? Is there a sprinkler system installed? Probably not. How much would it cost to install a specific kind of sprinkler system required to cope with the intensity of a lithium-ion battery fire? Tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars? Who pays for that? Everyone? Or just the resident insisting on charging their EV? These are exactly the questions that we will have to find answers for, as this article in the AFR demonstrates. Prepare for yet another big EV adoption hurdle. Apartment owners and strata managers are unprepared for the costs and complications of securing building insurance for blocks with electric vehicle owners and charging facilities. John Baines thought he was doing the right thing last March when he paid more than $2,000 to install his own power plug in the underground car park of his apartment to charge his new Tesla. But he was shocked to discover the strata managers for his Townsville apartment block were struggling to renew the building's insurance policy if there was any charging of electric vehicles or any other battery-powered transport like scooters in the basement garage. Baines and the 4 other EV drivers in his block of 100 apartments have now stopped charging at home until new insurance premiums can be sorted out. It did catch people in our building by surprise that there would be any problems with insurers, he says. I mean, why would there be, for goodness sake? Until it's resolved, I can't, in good conscience, charge my vehicle because if, heaven forbid, there was an incident, the whole building wouldn't be insured. Prepare for yet another big hurdle in the expansion of EV numbers in Australia. So far, potential difficulties with building insurance, higher premiums or upgrading power and fire protection management are little appreciated in the community. Andrew Hall is Chief Executive of the Insurance Council of Australia, which counts strata community insurance as a member. He warns bluntly this is a classic example of insurance being about pricing risk. This is a risk factor that has got to get mitigated and brought under control, he says. Regulation needs to catch up so strata committees can have confidence they are doing the correct work in retrofitting. EV owners already typically pay higher car insurance to accommodate more expensive repairs after accidents and a shortage of qualified technicians. But as EV penetration increases, ownership and home charging, particularly in older apartment buildings, will be of increasing concern for insurers always seeking to minimise potential payouts. Australian apartments with even minimal external cladding that doesn't meet the latest fire-resistant standards can't get building insurance, for instance, after the horrific Grenfell Tower inferno in London in 2017. But there's been little clarity from offshore about evolving insurance rules on using or charging lithium-ion batteries in EVs or other equipment. The data and issues are still not fully settled, Hall says. Well, there are certainly interesting times ahead as Fire and Rescue New South Wales and the Insurance Council of Australia are due to sit down in the next few weeks to discuss this very issue. In older apartment blocks, a lot of the car parks sit below services like gas, so great care has to be taken where the charging will take place, Hall says. The fire brigade needs good access to be able to put out these types of fires, and quite often you can't get a fire truck down there. We need to focus more carefully about where EV charging is happening. There are probably going to be quite a deal of safety upgrades required. That means substantial investment going well beyond the willingness of individual owners to pay to link their EV charging points to their own meters. Pricing generally will draw people's attention to risk factors, and as it starts to flow through, building owners, particularly in apartment buildings, will be doing more to try to control these things, Hall says. It will eventually come down to cost and the willingness of people to bear increased insurance premiums and additional costs of installation of sprinkler systems just to satisfy a few EV owners. And this doesn't even touch on the other issue that will be relevant in apartment blocks, namely whether the connection to the grid is sufficient to allow for multiple EV charging stations within the car park. Upgrading the connection would again be a significant cost that the apartment block owners would have to bear. None of this would be an issue if we weren't being forced to transition to EVs. It can all be traced back to the mad EV mandates, which are a direct result of mad climate panic. But at the end of the day, once the insurers and the fire authorities get onto this, it will be the cost of compliance which will eventually seal the fate of the EV transition.